I grew up knowing one thing for certain: I did not belong. It wasn't something anyone ever said out loud. No one needed to. I could feel it in the pauses that lingered too long, in the way my mother's smile tightened whenever I asked questions about my birth, and in the way my father avoided my eyes when relatives talked about family resemblance. I looked nothing like them. Different eyes. Different complexion. Different silence. They told me I was chosen. Chosen always sounded kinder than taken in. I was adopted at 3 years old, or so they claimed. There were no photos from before that age. No hospital bracelets. No baby stories. Just a neat, rehearsed explanation that never quite answered anything. I learned early not to press too hard. Questions made people uncomfortable, and uncomfortable people told lies. So I grew up polite, grateful, quiet. I became the kind of girl who learned to survive by observing rather than speaking, by remembering every detail because no one else seemed willing to remember for me. I worked hard in school, stayed out of trouble, and dreamed of leaving the town that never felt like mine. I left at 22. Freedom came with a new city, a new name for myself, and the illusion that the past could not follow me if I never looked back. That was where I met him. Daniel. He was calm where I was cautious, confident where I hesitated. He listened when I spoke, truly listened, as if every word I said mattered. We met by chance, or what I believed was chance, at a charity event I attended for work. By the end of the night, I felt something unfamiliar and dangerous blooming in my chest. Hope. We talked for hours. Then days. Then months. I told him everything I thought was safe to tell, that I was adopted, that my family history was vague, and that I didn't like talking about my childhood. He never pushed. He never questioned. He only held my hand and said, "Your past doesn't define you." I believed him. When he proposed, it felt like proof that my life was finally moving forward. I was no longer the girl without a past. I was a woman building a future. Our wedding was small, intimate, and perfect. My adoptive parents attended, smiling proudly, though something in my mother's eyes flickered when she met Daniel. I noticed it. I always notice things. But I dismissed it as nerves. I had learned to ignore my instincts. For 6 months, our marriage was peaceful, loving, normal. Then a single envelope arrived in the mail. No return address. No sender's name. Inside was a document I had never seen before. My adoption file. And written on the first page, in stark black ink, was a name I recognized far too well. Daniel. In that moment, my entire life cracked open. And I realized the truth had been waiting for me all along. I had not escaped my past. I had married straight into it. I read the papers again and again. My hands were shaking, but the words stayed the same. They did not change. They did not soften. They sat there, cold and clear, like they had been waiting for me to finally see them. The file said I was adopted at 3 years old. It listed my biological parents' names. It listed the date I was taken into care. And under known biological sibling, there was one name. Daniel. My husband. My breath became shallow. The room felt too small. I sat on the floor because my legs could no longer hold me. I told myself it had to be a mistake. Files get mixed up. People make errors. This kind of thing only happened in movies, not real life. But deep down I knew. Too many things suddenly made sense. The way my mother froze at our wedding. The way my father avoided Daniel's eyes. The way no one ever wanted to talk about where I came from. I felt sick. That night, Daniel came home smiling, asking about my day. I watched him carefully, like I was seeing him for the first time. His face looked the same. His voice sounded normal. Nothing about him showed guilt or fear. That scared me more than anything. I said nothing. I went to bed early and turned my back to him. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the words on that file. Biological sibling. Over and over again. The next morning, I called my adoptive mother. I asked her one simple question. Do you know who Daniel really is? There was silence on the line. Long, heavy silence. Then she started to cry. That was all the answer I needed. She confessed slowly, between tears. Yes, she knew. Yes, my biological family had another child. Yes, she had seen the name before. She said she never thought we would meet again. She said she believed fate would keep us apart. She was wrong. I hung up the phone without saying goodbye. I did not scream. I did not cry. Something inside me went very quiet. A calm, dangerous calm. My whole life had been built on lies, and everyone around me had helped keep those lies alive. Including Daniel. He had known. He had to have known. And if he knew, then this marriage was not an accident. That was when my heartbreak turned into something else. Something darker. I stopped thinking like a victim. I started thinking like someone who had been betrayed by everyone she trusted. And I promised myself one thing. If they thought the truth would destroy me, they were wrong. It would make me stronger. And it would make them pay. I decided to act normal. That was the hardest part. I smiled when Daniel talked. I cooked dinner. I laughed at his jokes. I slept beside him at night, even though my body felt stiff and cold. Every moment felt like a lie, but I knew one thing clearly. I needed time. Time to think. Time to understand. Time to plan. If I confronted him too soon, he could deny everything. He could twist the story and make me look confused or unstable. I had seen how easily people believed lies when the truth was uncomfortable. So I watched him. I noticed small things I had ignored before. The way he sometimes looked at me with something heavy in his eyes. Not love. Not exactly guilt either. It was more like fear. Fear of being exposed. One evening, I casually asked him about his childhood. He paused. Just for a second. But that second told me everything. He said he grew up in foster care for a short time. He said he barely remembered his biological family. He said the past didn't matter to him anymore. Every word was calm. Practiced. I nodded and said nothing. Inside, something burned. I began searching quietly. Late at night, when Daniel slept, I went through old emails, stored files, and forgotten folders on our shared computer. I found documents that confirmed what I already knew. Dates matched. Names matched. Even the city where we were born matched. There was no mistake. Daniel had known exactly who I was before he married me. And that meant one thing. This was never love. This was control. I remembered how he always pushed for us to move far away from my adoptive family. How he handled all the finances. How he encouraged me to quit my job and focus on us. At the time, it felt like care. Now I saw it for what it was. A trap. The anger came slowly, like a storm building far away. I did not let it show. I kept my face calm. I kept my voice soft. But inside, I was no longer confused or afraid. I was awake. And I made a decision. I would not leave quietly. I would not let him rewrite the story. I would not let my adoptive parents hide behind silence. They had stolen my truth. Daniel had stolen my choice. So I would take something back. Something they could never replace. And when the time came, they would finally understand what it felt like to lose control. I knew I had to be careful. Daniel was smart. He planned things quietly. Anyone who could hide a truth like this for so long was not careless. If I made one wrong move, he would sense it. And once he did, everything could fall apart. So I became patient. I started by pretending to depend on him more. I asked his opinion on small things. I let him think he was in control. Men like Daniel liked that feeling. It made them careless. While he relaxed, I worked. I contacted a private investigator using a phone he didn't know about. I gave them the adoption file and asked one question. How deep does this go? I needed proof, real proof, something that could not be explained away or denied. Then I reached out to my adoptive parents again. This time, I did not ask questions. I listened. They admitted more than they meant to. They confessed they had been warned to keep my past hidden. They said Daniel's adoptive family had reached out years ago. They said lawyers were involved. They said everyone believed silence was the safest choice. Safest for whom? Not for me. Every new detail made my stomach turn, but it also made my resolve stronger. This was bigger than a mistake. This was a decision. A decision made by adults who thought they knew better than a child who deserved the truth. At home, Daniel began to change. He became more affectionate, more attentive, almost nervous. It was as if he felt something slipping through his fingers, even though he couldn't see it yet. One night, he asked me softly, "Do you ever think about where you came from?" I looked straight at him and smiled. "No," I said. "Why would I?" His shoulders relaxed. He kissed my forehead and told me he loved me. I waited until he fell asleep. Then I sat in the dark and let the truth settle fully into my bones. This marriage was built on lies, my life was shaped by silence, and everyone involved thought I would stay quiet forever. They were wrong. I wasn't planning to destroy them in anger. I was planning to expose them with truth. And truth, I knew, was the one thing none of them could survive. The investigator called me 2 weeks later. I was alone in my car when I answered. My heart was beating fast, but my voice stayed calm. I had learned how to hide my feelings very well. What he told me changed everything. Daniel had not just known who I was. He had looked for me. Years ago, after leaving foster care, he hired someone to search for his biological sister. He had my original name. He had my date of birth. When he found out I had been adopted and renamed, he followed the trail slowly, carefully, until he found me. Our meeting was not fate, it was planned. I sat there in silence after the call ended. The world felt quiet, like it does before something breaks. I finally understood why he had been so perfect, so patient, and so gentle in the beginning. He wasn't falling in love. He was studying me. The investigator sent documents, messages, and payment records. Everything was clear. Everything was real. There was no way Daniel could deny it now. That night, I looked at my husband and felt nothing. No love. No fear. No sadness. Only clarity. I started taking small steps. I opened a new bank account in my name only. I gathered important documents and stored copies outside the house. I spoke to a lawyer without telling anyone. I learned my rights. I learned my options. Daniel noticed I was becoming quieter. "You seem tired," he said one evening. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I answered. And for the first time, it wasn't a lie. Meanwhile, my adoptive parents kept calling, leaving messages, apologizing, asking to explain. I did not respond. Their silence had shaped my life. Now they could sit with it. The hardest part was pretending. Pretending during meals. Pretending during conversations. Pretending during moments that used to feel real. But every lie I told brought me closer to the truth coming out. I was no longer the girl without a past. I was the woman who had uncovered it. And soon, everyone else would have to face what they had done, whether they were ready or not. I stopped feeling trapped. Once I knew the truth, fear no longer controlled me. Knowledge gave me strength. Every step I took was quiet, careful, and mine. I met with my lawyer again. I showed her everything, the adoption file, the investigator's report, and the proof that Daniel had searched for me before we met. She listened closely and told me something important. "You did nothing wrong," she said. "But what was done to you was very wrong." Hearing that mattered more than I expected. We planned the next move together. Not revenge driven by anger, but action guided by truth. I would protect myself first. Everything else would come after. At home, Daniel became restless. He asked more questions. He watched me more closely. I could tell he felt the distance between us growing, even though he didn't know why. One night he said, "You feel far away lately." I looked at him and answered honestly, without giving anything away. "I'm thinking." He nodded, but his eyes stayed on me longer than usual. That was when I knew. He was scared. Not because he loved me, but because he was losing control. I moved out slowly, one bag at a time. Important things first. He didn't notice at all. He trusted the version of me he had created in his head, the quiet, grateful woman who never questioned anything. He underestimated me. I also sent a message to my adoptive parents. "I know everything," I wrote. "I will speak when I am ready. Nothing more. No anger. No explanation. Just truth." For the first time in my life, I was not reacting to what others did to me. I was choosing my own steps. I was setting my own rules. Daniel thought he owned my silence. He was wrong. Soon, I would take something from him that he could never get back. The story he worked so hard to control. I chose the day carefully. Not out of fear, but out of respect for myself. I met Daniel in a public place. Somewhere quiet, but not private. I wanted witnesses, not drama. I wanted the truth to speak for itself. He smiled when he saw me. The same calm smile that once made me feel safe. It did nothing now. I placed the folder on the table between us. He looked at it. Then at me. You finally know, he said. No denial. No surprise. That was his mistake. I told him I had everything. The files. The proof. The records show he searched for me, found me, and married me knowing exactly who I was. I told him I had a lawyer. I told him I was filing for an annulment and reporting everything. For the first time, he looked small. He tried to explain. He said he felt lonely. He said he wanted family. He said he never meant to hurt me. I stood up. You stole my choice, I said calmly. And that ends now. I walked away without looking back. After that, the truth moved faster than I did. My lawyer handled the rest. Authorities were notified. My adoptive parents were questioned. The silence they hid behind for years finally collapsed. People asked questions they could no longer avoid. Daniel lost everything he tried to control. His marriage. His secrets. His version of the story. I changed my name. I moved to a new place. Not to run, but to live. This time, with my eyes open. I was adopted. I was lied to. I was betrayed. But I was not broken. The revenge was not shouting or destroying lives. The revenge was truth. And once it was spoken, I finally felt free.